Hello.
Excellent timing. We are now officially live. Does it say live up in the box?
Mine does.
Okay.
Yes, mine does.
Oh, there goes David. We'll see how it does with the cameraman. It's supposed to try and figure out who's talking and make that one bigger. I think last time it started freaking out.
You just made me nervous now.
Oh, yeah? I have that effect on people. Okay, so officially the topic is training and casting. I think that's what we determined. Does David know? Oh, okay, he turned off his audio. Okay.
Yeah, I muted. I apologize. I'm riding in the car at the moment, so.
Okay.
I'm riding in the car, so I figured I would mute mine so it's not all windy and radio.
Gotcha. Are you driving?
No, I'm not. My niece is driving, actually. I'm riding with her, so.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, as long as you're not driving.
Just on the wheel, that'd be great.
Yeah, mounted on the wheel.
That would be a very Capitano move, though.
Yeah, the video kind of slaloms a little bit.
Yeah, just as I move the wheel.
Okay, so, well, I think the maestro of training here is definitely Tony. I mean, he's been the czar of training for Commedia in Australia for a while, from what I understand.
Yeah, I think I interrupted a train of thought from you, Tony, when I came in as well.
Well, I guess what we were talking about, I was going to bring up that there was a relationship between Shakespeare and Commedia, how you said you had a Shakespearean experienced actor, and they took to Commedia like water, duck to water. I was going to pick up on that. I was going to say that at the moment I'm actually teaching some students, you know, that have been studying Shakespeare, but we're doing The Servant of Two Masters. And it's like commediaizing a play that was written without masks, as Goldoni did originally. And you taking this big, long, wordy script, and you're sort of undoing it, unpacking it, if you like, so that you take it back to the visual gags and the you know the simple scenarios and the misunderstandings and all that kind of stuff that happens in that play. The letter that gets swapped and so on. This is all Commedia scenarios. And so what we're doing is stripping back the dialogue and bringing it back to allowing the masks to make the gags or to create the dialogue, which is the gags. And then we sort of pepper the original script back on. So I get the actors to learn the lines just so that we can sort of honor the script for the purists. So it was a very interesting experiment.
I think I'm going to want to talk to you about that once that's all finished. Oh, it's Allie! Yay! Hi, Allie!
Hello!
Hi, folks. Hi, Kate.
We were just talking about Tony is in the process of sort of stripping back Servant of Two Masters down to a scenario for production and then building it back up. And we have been kicking around doing Tartuffe like that for a couple of years now, and with the idea that we would set it in sort of a Dust Bowl Texas circus. So Tartuffe is kind of a what do you call him? Like a snake charming kind of
snake oil.
Yeah, not quite a snake oil salesman, but the old like tent revivalist kind of guy. Who's trying to sort of convert the circus, and so the first person that he converts is Grandma, who's the fortune teller. And so each of the roles is actually a circus performer that actually has the skill that they're doing. So and then the maid in it is the aerialist, who's always in the rafters. And so the reason why she hears so much and knows so much is that no one ever looks up when they're having a conversation. So she's always like stuck up there listening to everyone's personal conversation. So
she's stuck on stage the entire show.
Yes, Up in a lira, yeah, which I'm sure they'll hate because those are terribly uncomfortable to sit on. So yeah, I'm interested to know how that process works out because that's exactly what we were planning on doing with it. And Aaron and I have been sort of having a bit of a disagreement about that process because he's so fond of that text, and I'm not nearly
Fond
so
of what?
clever.
Sorry?
Huh?
You fond of what precisely?
Oh, he's just fond of the text. He's always fond of,
All right.
especially if it's already there. He's always worried about upsetting purists when there's text involved, and I'm nowhere near as reverent for that sort of thing. So he wants to preserve some of the monologues, and I don't at all. I say keep them or don't at all. So
I feel like that's an ancient argument.
yep. Yeah, Tony?
Yeah, Kate, I was going to say how we handled the texts is that we basically read through the script, but it was like, okay, we got 16 people in my class at the moment. This is the university class.
Right.
So I thought, let's print out 16 copies if we're not going to use the text. So what I did was I split the group into split the class into 3 groups and gave them 1 act each. And then I got them to study their act and then report back to the other groups. This was a time-saving thing, but a very interesting thing happened. Is that what I did was I said to each group, I said, can you do a presentation of what that act consists of? So they did their study, they highlighted the scenes that were important, plot points and so on. And so then when they presented back to the other 2 groups that were waiting, they actually chose like cameo pictures, like, oh, can I borrow you stand there, you're Pantalone, and you're this, and this is this scene. And they sort of like, it was just a still image. So they took a picture, like the actors stood still in the position. And then we thought, hang on, this is a little bit static. So what we did, we ended up using playback theater. Are you familiar with playback theater? Where, you know, means telling the story and the actors act it out. Well, we used this in describing the act and its contents. And a very interesting thing happened there. This is what we found valuable, is that we summarized the script in a physical way rather than wordy dialogue. I think people get weighed down with text. So you've got to get to the essence of it. What is the physical movements of the scenes? And as I said, later on, we brought the text back in. We layered some of the important dialogue back onto the scenes.
Very cool. Weird. My front door has just enough of a gap in it that wind blows through it, and it sounds like a ghost or a whoopee cushion or a whoopee cushion ghost.
I like the comment.
So it just made that was what the weird face was for. It heard the sound. And it's always alarming.
I've got just a practical thing. Which is if you're going to call it Tartuffe, like if you're actually going to title it Tartuffe as
Probably not, but maybe.
Okay, all right, okay. Well, if you were, okay, then somehow you do have to include certain elements which are recognisable for it.
Yeah.
If you're just going to use the storyline, the text and the other elements don't actually matter. That's just that's a marketing thing, which kind of audiences are quite sensitive to, and so are bookers. You know, if you call something Tartuffe,
there are certain things that they expect.
Yeah, you have to do. But reflecting what Tony said, some of the text is in there because it's really good text. So it's almost you go back and you find the storyline and you find the physical storyline, what makes it exciting, and then you stick. I don't know. Then you just find out what the best lines are, the lines that people recognise, and you see if the students can reintegrate. I don't know, the best of the lines really, because often, often the lines people remember are the significant ones at points of emotional transaction. Right. Or physical transaction, within the scene. That's all I'm going to say on that one. I think, because it's quite nice. It's quite nice to chop something in.
I agree, because it defines the style as well. It's a language that's quite old, so you have to acknowledge that.
Yeah. Yeah,
They
we'll
call
see
it
how
circus
it works.
Tartuffe.
Huh?
Call it circus Tartuffe.
Sure. Yeah, I figured whatever it was, we usually the titles of our shows are always such a pain. We hate titling our shows. We should just call them by number. This will be number 6. We're about to do number 6. Which is Game of Thrones and King Lear squished together.
I'm really excited about this.
That should be fun. And actually, based on our little training / audition session, we may either be doing. I may be doing a dance role. I may just be.
Whose is the
So we'll see how that goes.
I think that's a lot of idea.
All of a sudden, audio seems to have gone away. Are you guys still
No,
there?
I'm still here.
Oh, okay.
I'm still here. I think we maybe lost Tony.
Might have been people listening.
Oh,
I
gotcha.
People
Tony's
listening
being
to
picked up
dogs.
by a different camera. This is weird.
It's
It
okay.
looks like-
Technology sometimes works.
Yeah, we learned that during the big tech conference.
Yeah, sorry I'm not being super talkative. I have sleeping actors in the next room.
Oh, gotcha. Well, Francesca was asking me about this training thing that we just did this weekend. We basically did 2 3-hour training sessions. One was yesterday and one was today, and we had probably about 20 people over both of them.
Mhm.
Well, no, we had like 13 people yesterday, and we had 10 people today. So we did a bunch of sort of bastardized Lecoq type stuff, and Aaron is very fond of doing viewpointing. And some quick crash course in characters, and then we started. I mean, it was just a very lengthy, sort of insane couple of workshops that produced some really cool stuff. Actually, we wound up with probably 5 or 6 people that we may wind up recruiting.
That's awesome.
So yeah, we're just trying to figure out how to cast things now, because the show that we're doing, I think it's going to wind up needing 7 people, and a bunch of our company is, and that's actually huge for us. We almost never. We usually have 5 or 6 people in our shows, and so 7 is weird, and then musicians will be on top of that. So that's like hauling 9 people on tour. It sounds crowded. But we'll see how it shakes out. We'll stick people where they fit best, and I'll probably wind up playing Capitano again. So okay.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to the sort of like the base topic, I think sort of not your frustration with the workshop, but just the exhaustive nature of your workshop is that there are so many things that you need to learn to do Commedia before you actually learn a character.
Yeah.
And I imagine that's part of the struggle. And I think part of the struggle of doing this work and working with new people is everyone's coming from a different background, but you really do need to have at least an established common language of some sort to be able to do this.
Yeah.
So that you can't just cast someone. You know what I mean?
We were discovering that, I mean, we had a bunch of people. I mean, Julie Moore, for example, was in attendance yesterday, and she's got a ton of training. And so it was funny to watch her face, because we've adapted so much of the sort of classic material to our needs. And that doesn't necessarily, I mean, she's looking at us like we're nuts as we're introducing some of these exercises, because she recognizes them, but they're so modified for our use that she's like, what are you doing? It's like, trust us. We need them to learn it this way, or they will never be able to work in our process. Yeah. Because I mean, we rehearse a show in about 24 hours total, which we'll probably wind up adding a few more hours just to train these people up. But I mean, in 6 hours, we probably really just scratched the surface in what we need to teach these people. And it sort of felt like I was picked up by a tornado twice this weekend. So
well,
I'm
the
off
issue,
by it.
well, the issue always with working with new actors is that you actually have to see what they can do and then typecast them into the show.
Yeah.
It's like as well, you know, you have to, with a new actor coming in or a new presence, there you actually have to book into what they do well, and that might not quite fit in with what you do now. You know,
Right.
but you have to take a punt, and you have to basically give them some space to find out how they inhabit a character.
Yeah.
So it's kind of on one side of it, we're going to train you up to be a comedian. On the other side, it's this person is funny that way.
Yeah.
You know, so we have to make use of them being funny that way at first because of the shape they look, you know, and all that. And then once they can be them or that kind of typecasting on stage, then they can start to train it in terms of typing. I shared a workshop with a woman called Anna Cottis, who's worked with Carlo Bosso for a lot. And kind of she's coming out with, you know, you can't perform comedy or you can't be good at commedia unless you've been, you know, training and performing for 10 years. You know, she is amazing on stage when she was demonstrating stuff, but you you kind of you just basically have to go, you know, we're starting this apprenticeship, you know, to it. It's always like because that even some of the madder Italians I've met, some of them are really humble about what they're doing, which is kind of like, you know, we are learning this and we're getting better as we're going along. Sorry, it's 11 o'clock and I'm raving slightly.
I'm right there with you, Ollie. It's midnight.
You're on Europe time. Tony, what time is it on your planet?
Oh, it's fine. It's just 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, we're kind of heading up to midnight here.
Yeah.
Well,
I haven't been able to figure out a better time than this, though.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'd had a snooze
If you have
early.
a recommendation for a better time, let me know, because I know that, I mean, it seems like it's either right this very moment or we cut out either Europe or Australia. So.
No,
Yeah,
it's
I think
cool. Cool.
General.
What was it? Don't cut out Australia.
I know. I would hate to cut you guys out. Tony always brings up some good stuff.
Oh.
I just want to pick up Ollie. We haven't been introduced.
Hi, Tony.
Oh, I'm
Hi.
so sorry. That's my sorry.
And-
Tony,
Hi.
Ollie, Tony.
Yeah. You.
Ollie is. Oh, go ahead. I was
Yeah,
going
I
to
know.
make introductions, but you can introduce yourself.
Sorry, we're talking at the same time here. I just wanted to pick up on what Ali was saying about, 10 years experience. I truly believe that too. We lost Kate.
I think we've lost her face,
No, she'll
possibly.
be
No,
back.
I'm still here. I'm just dealing with a child who is.
Yeah, we heard child noises.
Yes.
Other people
Oh,
have
happy
dog
Mother's
noises.
Day, by the way.
Hey.
Okay.
Sorry.
She's gone.
So we're back.
Yeah. I was wanted to say that that the 10 years experience is absolutely something that I've realized after performing for so long, and my actors that I've been working with for at least 7 years now, is that they're only just getting to the point where they can walk on stage and feel absolutely comfortable that they're going to do a performance, a scenario that they're familiar with, and also that they can ad-lib and improvise with their audience, and makes it a truly live, interactive performance. So that's really the essence of Commedia. When people walk away from experiencing that from experienced actors, is that then they go, yes, that is what Commedia was, was like, or it could have been, or was, and they walk away sort of feeling that they know the experience. Whereas when I'm often teaching university students, and you've got like, you know, only a few weeks, maybe a 3-week intensive period, you can only just touch the surface.
Yes, yes, and it comes out, in all sorts of weird ways. The inexperience, the trying too hard, you know, so it comes out, you know, physically, so they don't look relaxed on stage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's something I find, you know, quite kind of just relax. You know, yes, it is going to go badly because we haven't got it right, but you know, like if you look as though it's going to go wrong, it will go wrong. You know, so so don't tense up. So you kind of so always you're trying to identify what the little ticks or the little things are. You know, if you're directing something or trying to make something look good in a short period of time. Otherwise, it's otherwise I always try and be as relaxed as possible, you know, just to let the actors evolve something together. You know, you got to keep pushing them in the right direction, and sometimes you're just saying, I want this to happen, but I'm leaving what I want up to how you do it is kind of up to you. You know, because then they'll have their ideas, and if an actor thinks they own their part, you know, if it's their gags, if it's their sense of humour, if they've written their lines, they tend to be a lot happier about doing it, as apart from going, no, mate, this will be funnier. Trust me, I've been doing it for longer. You know, you have to have that in the back of your brain as their, you know, kind of as their safety net. It's not a pirate show anymore. Go away.
Exactly, right? He's like, I hear Ollie. I hear Ollie.
Ollie, Ollie?
Hi. Yes.
Hello. Can I ask, when you are working and generating with your company, is there someone, maybe you at the helm of it all, who sort of has last say, or is it more of a collective, for lack of a better word?
It's not really collective. Well, we haven't done the show for a few years because we're just basically waiting for funding, and I've been getting involved in divorce and crap. But when we started, there were two things in my mind. One is there weren't any Commedia actors locally, so I wanted to train some people up to play with, and also I couldn't guarantee, because of childcare, I'll be there every evening. So I was basically being the Kappa Comico, but not being on stage.
Ollie has a prodigious amount of beautiful daughters, so you know.
Yes, many. I mean, many daughters.
Prodigious amount of beautiful daughters.
So when we started off the company, we the first 3 or 4 shows we did one a year, and I spent about 6 months writing the scenario, so I knew it in my head. I knew why everything happened, and then and I'd know which actors I wanted to use. So kind of as you're writing this scenario, why it's funny, not the lines, is going through your head. You know, you can picture these you know, funny little people that you know, and you're trying not to be too horrible to on stage. You know, or dumping major shit. That's good. But then you have to stand back and you if we had a 3-week rehearsal period, the first week the actors would first love and then they'd hate, because what we did, we basically said we are storytelling the show. We're not acting it. No acting. We're just storytelling it in the third person, so that every actor. So the first thing is you're actually bomb-proofing the scenario so it works.
Yeah.
You know, including all the. Okay, well, you've got to play another character, so you've got to make sure it. You know, the plot works when they're off stage for 2 scenes, being another pirate or whatever. But they're writing what they do and they're writing their storyline. So when they start to stick it together, the first thing that happens is they have thousands of choices as to what to do, because they know the story. You know, if you're trying to nail a scenario down in their imaginations as strong as a fairy story, you know, almost, so that when, you know, so they know what happens in the first scene. You know, they haven't done it before. So the end of the first week, you know, actors being actors, I want to rehearse, I want lines. I'm going, no, because if we start nailing stuff down, too early, we're denying ourselves in loads of possibilities. So what my role was to kind of just get the story into their heads, and then be kind of the technical manager of the finer detail of plots. And sometimes, damn it, you get better ideas. And if everyone knows the story, everyone's with you.
Mm-hmm.
You can make adjustments. If no one knows the story, and you're making adjustments, everyone stares at you blankly, and you waste a few hours.
Yeah.
And it can be slightly unnerving. But then once everyone knows the story, effectively actors can work on their own to work on a scene. And my job was simply to cut all the words out that weren't funny.
Mm-hmm.
And if they couldn't find anything funny or dramatic in it, to give them something.
Mm-hmm.
And the preparation we did before, I think, was musical. Okay, largely, we'd basically, decide, on what songs were going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I know the first week would have an intro song, a few storytelling songs, a finale number, a musical chase, and we'd be rehearsing those for an hour every day. So the actors had solid islands which they knew would work. So we were always solving the musical theatre issue, which was how do you get into the bloody songs and dances?
Yeah.
Because the actors were doing it anyway. Because as they told the story, and now we're going to practice the song because it's the right place, and then we get back to it. So there was almost never any issue of, of what happens, of kind of how to do it. And what was interesting is kind of, is sometimes you would teach them a bit of commedia movement, sometimes you wouldn't, and sometimes they would come up with a version of it. It sometimes just helped to, it just helped to give them pointers one way, and then as the emotional stuff, or the actual emotional transaction in each scene racked up, they'd find themselves doing it. So you kind of didn't have to teach it as a form. I mean, which is kind of, this commedia. Well, it is, but we had a 3-week rehearsal period, as apart from a 6-week rehearsal period, and 4 actors, and a director techie. That was me. So we had 4 actors, hour-and-a-half show, a commedia scenario. So everyone, so after the first 3 shows, we kind of had a thing of everyone had a main character who had a storyline. So you had 4 storylines going. Then everyone had a support character that was like a plot character, like a duke who oppressed someone or something. And then we had a chorus that everyone played a Zanny in a chorus. So you suddenly find that actually everyone's got 3 characters. So that, for some actors used to learning lines, was a bit of a, oh my god. But the issue we had when we scripted it too early, there was one show the actors wanted to script really early because, I don't know, I think they were panicking because we always had major issues on the first night. Oh my god, we don't know it enough. We've only just finished writing it. And I go, well, we haven't got another week, and actually, if it's on the boil now, that's a good thing for me. But there's one show they scripted it too early, and then we had to make changes in it, and because actors were anchored to script rather than a story, they found it very hard to unlearn words. Because if they learn the story first, you can stick different words on top of it, and you're still doing the story. So I think, sorry to answer your question much quicker now since I've thought about it.
Oh no, I've enjoyed every second of it.
Thank you. No, it's trying to anchor the actors into story rather than script. Because that's the way you improvise it. Because you're not going off on one. You're actually, you're riffing on the storyline, or you're going off the story and coming back to the story. And although for an audience it's the gags everyone remembers, it's actually the dramatic storyline that holds it all together, makes people go, oh my god, is the princess going to be murdered? Yes.
We do pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
As we rehearse, and actually we've been really fortunate to have Gian Giacomo Colli here for our last 2 shows. He sort of served as a director for 2 shows ago, and then he was in this last show that we did. And he, first of all, because he speaks English, but it's like his third language. So what we found was that our story had to be very, very clear. And we're so eager to sort of run off, with the story as sort of a slightly more malleable thing. And he wants it perfect before you move, just so he understands it. And so just the discipline of doing that, because we get so excited, we're like chomping at the bit to get moving and put the skins on and start stomping around. And he definitely reeled us in the last couple of shows and taught us some discipline that I think Ollie would be rather proud of.
Ciao, John Giacomo.
Yeah. I think he's in Rome right now.
Ah.
And it's warmer than here.
Yeah.
Where are you, Francesca?
I am in Treviso, but earlier today I was in Venice. And the weather was so nice. Yeah.
Where to next? Where are you headed next?
So basically, we're going to be in the Northeast for the next couple of weeks. So we'll be in around Venice, around Udine, around we're going to Rimini this week, which is the East Seacoast, which I'm super excited about.
Rimini's beautiful.
Yeah. And then Milan is where this company seems to be doing most of its work, just because it's where most of the money is. So I'll be back there. But yeah, I've sort of done the whole, not entirely the boot, but I've gone up and down the boot, which has been amazing.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds terrible. You poor thing.
Yeah.
No, I think the storyline of actually nailing the storyline down. I know for an actor level, it's their anchor. But for an audience level, because sometimes there's 2 shows we started with that the first 2 times we ran it in front of an audience, we got no laughs, which was very scary. But the audience came and told us afterwards that they loved it and they really loved the story. It was actually a point we hadn't quite got the velocity of it, so that all the situations were ridiculous enough, or the audience involved, or the actors weren't quite trusting the story enough. But that they actually followed the storyline enough, so that even when the laughs don't happen, all the audience is just, I don't know. We had one show that the audience had eaten a huge meal and just was slowly digesting and not laughing. It's just horrible to do. But once if there's a story, if there's a dramatic line they can follow, that's fine. So, and then once you've got that nailed down, the next line is all the character, humour, and then above that you've got the gags, or the gags that start coming out of the movement that's based on the emotion that's based on the story, or Lazzi, sorry. In one show, it just actually happened. We had 2 sword fights, which are really good sword fights, and then we just had the twig of when people were waving swords around, making declamatory speeches. You can see everyone's really worried about the sword, so everyone's watching the point of the sword. So you suddenly get wonderfully choreographed head movement, and some nutters just waving a sword about, and you just get wonderful movement. So you get the story, and then you get a gag on top of it, and that's. And that stuff you can't write in, but all you can do is make sure when you're writing the scenario that there's enough emotional conflict in order to create action, or people forced to do terrible things. So it's always make the situation worse. Make the situation worse, make it worse, and then make it worse.
I wonder, I was thinking, just because, of course, in the school setting, you really don't get to repeat performances, and I wonder if your audience's first reactions have anything to do where the actor is working. So, for example, you do a commedia performance for the first time. I feel like the actor really has to be intellectually is running everything. But the more that you repeat something, the deeper the action goes in your body.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
wonder if that's sort of that correlation where the deeper into the body that the show gets and the action gets, obviously the freer the body is, and the more you are going to be moving from your gut instead of your head. And I wonder if
Yes.
I sort of felt that.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
No, except it's also a trust thing with the actor and the other actors.
Mm-hmm.
If you've done comedy a bit and somebody someone says, look, well, can you go on and do this scene? You go, yeah, all right, and you kind of, I can play Pantaloni, and you're suddenly in there, and this, and this poor unsuspecting actor who doesn't, who kind of hasn't done it for a bit is going, oh, whoa, back off, man.
Mm-hmm.
You're going, oh, okay. No, you just have to match it, or you have to have the confidence that it is going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Which is again why I try and get the story in their heads. It's like and in bite-sized chunks, all you got to do in this scene is get the money off him.
We do kind of similar. Part of what our sort of rule is since we've most of our company's been working together for about 15 years. So,
yep.
I mean, we can step on stage. I can walk onto a stage with Aaron, and I know what he's going to do. I know that most of his jokes are going to be War of 1812 jokes, and they will be funny for like 4 people, and that I'll have to like round it out for everyone else in the audience, or we'll only have the historians laughing in the audience. And similarly for Genevieve, she tends to have extremely intellectual and wordy contributions to a scene where most of our redneck audience will definitely be, really over their head. So what we try and do is make sure that we have in our cast a mix of that our veterans outnumber our new people, and that every scene has a veteran and a new person at least. Mm-hmm. So that there isn't, so that even scenes that are kind of going off the rails, there's someone driving, and there's someone who's like able to take up the new person's hand and say, okay, we got this, let's go. And so it's sort of like scampering off the rails together kind of thing. And there are 2 things that I tend to say to our new actors, and one is that, like, as long as you keep your spine supple, like, don't bring it all up here into your shoulders, but keep like down and loose. It's really hard to freak out if you've got a supple spine. And to keep the idea is that our audience should feel like the show's going to go wrong. Should just believe that something terrible is about to happen, because we perform in bars. So the only way that we can compete with the rock music from next door and the girl who with the gigantic tits and like mostly no shirt that's walking past in front of the stage, like the only way that we can compete with that is if they think someone is going to get hurt, the show is going to go off the rails, like it's just going to be a disaster, and keep it just this side of that, so that especially when we perform with people who juggle knives and people who can contort themselves, all of those acts have elements of danger that a well-oiled show doesn't have. So even when we have things so set that nothing possibly terrible could ever happen, we try really hard to make it feel like it's about to go wrong, if that makes sense. And I think that keeps it feeling very, very spontaneous.
That's interesting, because I was talking to get away from the mic. I was talking to a friend of mine from Hong Kong, because there's been some academic research about the precise nature of kind of improvisation in commedia, and one of the points of view, my God, I can't remember the guy's name. Never mind. Anyway, is basically coming out with was, yes, Italian acting was a style. It was improvised. On one level, it was the actors were writing their own words. They had a storyline and they wrote their own script for it. On the other level, they also used to use the idea they were improvising, which they could do, as a selling point, which is very close.
Mm.
It's improvised. It might all fall apart.
Yeah.
So, there very definitely is. If you're using, well, we're going to do a whole improvised play.
Mhm.
The dell'Arte actors at the time were doing an improvised play at the same time as there were scripted plays happening. So there is very much the cog. Wow.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm just drawing a historical parallel with what you do, Kate. In the sense of there's, if it's improvised, it could go wrong. So, like, part of the reason people are going to see the improvised comedians is that it's car crash theatre.
Mhm.
Well, we definitely there's a lot of improv in our shows, but it's all within a structure. I mean, there's a reason why we always know the plot, and every scene is fairly well structured, but there are definite moments where it is encouraged for us to improvise, where it's like, here is where there's a one-liner, and that actor either comes with it on the spot or surprises us. And we find that the easiest way to keep that feeling that it's all new to us and all of us are kind of on the same ride is to find those bits and work to surprise our other actors, because we will have our actors will break a little bit on those moments so that we can maintain the fact that our fourth wall is more like a hedge, just to like really invite the audience in. Our last show, for example, Aaron and I played lovers together, and we sort of we see each other at the beginning of the show, and then I'm kidnapped, and we don't see each other again until the very end of the show. And when I see him again, my character is sort of a bibliophile, and I decided to surprise him with a rap song, one of our last shows, based on I Like Big Butts. But it was I Like Big Books, and I cannot lie. And it was a very long rap that he definitely was not able to maintain character during little cabbage patching going on. So that's usually how we keep it seeming like it's going to go off the rails. The tricky part is finding actors who understand the difference between like a very kind of controlled, orchestrated, perceived chaos and actual chaos. Because a lot of times that sort of looseness and the way that we play together feels like there isn't a structure. And it should seem like there isn't a structure, but I think that's been a really tricky thing too, is making sure that actors are willing to first of all, deal with the responsibility of making their own material, which we found is more difficult for sort of university-trained actors specifically, who are being trained to get a job on Broadway. And instead, you put them in an ensemble and give them some creative responsibility, and they panic. They have no idea what you want from them. It is impossible. We're asking too much. You send them to go write their own material, and they come back, really, really frustrated. It's been a really interesting ride with the different people that we've brought in over time.
So how do you go about finding actors?
Well, we find actors from a lot of different places. What do you think? Where is that coming from? Oh, okay.
That's in the background of mine, sorry.
Oh, gotcha. Our two most recent actors we brought in, we found a handful of them as other performers at a Renaissance festival. And one of them was the guy playing Shakespeare, who's been acting specifically in Shakespeare for like 20 some odd years. And we just asked them to do ridiculous things with us out there, and they were immediately willing to. I mean, we had them do smash Little Mermaid and Jaws together on a day when it was really rainy and we were particularly disgruntled. And then we did Shrek and The Exorcist squished together. We called it the Shrexorcist, which was lots of fun. And then we did the Rocky Horror Picture Show and Star Wars. And if you ask someone to improv with your way through those stories with you in front of an audience, and they can keep up, then we kind of knew that they'd be great to work with. So we brought them in. We brought in a recent BFA grad a couple shows ago, and it was just really difficult because he'd been extremely
BFA is
successful.
what?
Graduate
It's
student.
essentially conservatory training
Yeah.
Okay.
at the first
C
level.
Yeah. So he just graduated, and he'd had a really great career in school. And Aaron had worked with him and had really enjoyed working with him and recommended that we bring him on the next show. And coincidentally, Aaron wasn't in that show, so he was basically like, "Here's this thing," and then wasn't there. And that poor kid, man, like he just was unprepared for it. He hadn't had the physical training that the department said he had gotten based on what they say they train their students in. He wasn't prepared to be responsible for his own material. When he was given help, he resented the fact that he needed help, and so we sort of took it out on the ensemble. I mean, it was just like, by the time we realized that there wasn't anything that we could do really about improving that situation with him, we were too close to the show to recast him. So that show was kind of a bummer.
But some of my best friends are actors.
Yeah.
We had this. Can I, Kate? Can I carry on with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. No. God, this is in the 80s when I joined this bunch of people called the Unfortunati. We ended up about 8 of us. We did loads of shows but never made any money. But the interesting thing that we suddenly, on about year 2, we suddenly realised that the only person who had any formal drama training was me, and basically I had given up becoming like an actor, and I'd been a street performer for 3 years before I joined them. I basically work in Covent Garden as a juggler and a clown. So that all the people who were in Unfortunati were people who gravitated towards a core of people who were into Commedia. So there wasn't a sense of, this is my art, I'm an actor. There was a sense of, wow, I really want to find out more about Commedia, and these guys who are doing it have said come and play. So that was the first kind of thing. And the skill conservatory actors, I was going to use that word before someone else did, conservatory actors lack is audience skills. Is basically audience relating skills, and the people I generally prefer working with, or the people who get it earlier and who don't freak out because you say, oh, there isn't a script, it's a story, we'll make a script, are basically buskers or musicians.
Or dancers.
Or dancers, yeah, okay.
Or physical theater students.
or physical theatre students. Well, when I say buskers and musicians, it's people who ply their art in the midst of chaos.
Right.
So you have to chat, you have to relate to the audience. A conservatory actor doesn't have to talk to an audience. So it's like, and this is our song, and this is where the song goes, and thank you for that song, and here's a joke. So there's kind of, so they've got a relationship with an audience already. So like always in a show, you're building that up, and that's how you're telling whether the show's working or not, and how to pitch your own energy. A conservatory actor has to learn those skills.
Right.
Even if it is just shouting, "Come here!" and we need an audience, come closer,
Right.
and all that kind of stuff.
Ollie,
Yes.
can I add to what you're saying? I truly believe that what you're saying about the street performer or street cred is really what makes the good commedia player. What I found, the university experience or the university student coming along, I've experienced that. I call them professional students. In other words, they've gone through 3 years of training, and their tutor has told them what to do, jump through the hoops, do these exercises, and they do them very well. And they say, right, what's next? And so they do the next exercise. This is our education system really at work here.
Yeah.
When they're let out into the real world, they really don't know how to apply themselves because they haven't got someone saying, okay, jump now. And that's why I call them professional students. They're very, very good at doing exercises that have been designed. But putting on a show, well, you have to have what I call flying time. You know how pilots have up air time when they fly? They actually, credit it to their experience. Well, I believe that once you're on stage, you have a stage persona. In other words, you don't know an actor until you've been working with him on stage. When they're facing an audience and you're facing an audience, do you actually get to know who you're working with, your fellow actor? So I call that flying time. And again, and of course, that experience that you share together with other actors is something that you put under your belt, and hopefully you can take it with you when you go to another company. But it works best when you're actually working with the same troupe for an extended period of time.
I actually think this entire conversation has made a big circle, because for me, what we're talking about is the difference between an quote-unquote actor and a performer who has narrowly defined themselves as, I do this and I say that, and then you respond the same exact way we've been doing it for days and days and weeks, and essentially storytelling, a group of people who are completely on board with the same main events, but who are willing to play in the story. I mean, I think that's just the level of responsibility that we're teaching in our actors in the educational system. It's exactly what you said, Tony. It's a series of exercises. It's the work on the self. It's the, here's your script. Oh, great, go and memorize it. But I think, at least in America, there's a huge sort of misunderstanding and lack of what improv is, and there's just no sort of sense of ensemble in the conservatory world.
Yeah, I actually just wrote a paper about it that is probably going to put me in hot water with my university, actually.
You're graduating, though, aren't you?
This summer I graduate. I've got to finish my stupid thesis, which will never be done.
I
need to quit doing things like produce shows and parents.
Red code. On message.
But the paper was basically taking a look at, most of the 20th and 21st century like pedagogy that specifically discussed how to make theater and theory, very specifically request ensemble-based theater that's based in the physical. If you look at like Grotowski, Meyerhold, Brecht, even, like all of those people are talking about, you get a group of people together, they work over long periods of time, they devise material, or we work collaboratively, and they know how to use their bodies, and it's a disciplined sort of environment where they know each other, they know themselves, they know the material, and then they work together. And I was trying to figure out how any of that translates to how we actually teach theater today. And looked at my department specifically, reading both promotional material that they were circulating and the training and sort of papers, more or less, for the teaching staff, and then what the curriculum said, and try and match all of that up. And then I did sort of exit interviews with the junior and senior BFA students to see if they, knew how to felt comfortable in an ensemble, knew, what some of the physical disciplines were that the department said that they were teaching, and it was really depressing. It was so sad when it was over. And wrote the paper about it and turned it in. Everyone was like, "Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa." But we'll if they do anything about it. Anyway, I'm on my way out, so it doesn't matter. And we know now not to cast people from that department. It's better just to hang out.
It's a business. A drama department is also a business.
Totally.
You get money in.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
a guy who used to work with Carlo Bosso, who's on Facebook, called Adriano Juresovic. He calls, I think, well, Tony's equivalent to flying time. I mean, he calls it stage weight, because we did a one-off show with him years ago, and there's about there's 3 of us who knew what we were doing according to him, and 3 who didn't. And he was saying, "Okay, Ollie, you come on stage, and the stage is now heavy." And then she comes onto stage, and the stage is now light. She's so light she cannot be on the stage on her own. And it's and that's kind of and that's the flying time.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm relaxed. I belong here. Okay, audience, I'm going to give you
that. I'll use that in the future, Ollie. Thank you.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
courtesy of
Perfect.
Adriano.
Yeah.
We were actually talking.
But there is a big split in terms of theatre, which is why we're all Commedia people, I think, or kind of. My name's Ollie, and I'm a Commedia addict. Hello, Ollie. Is that it's actually taking responsibility for your material. We actually enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sense of what can we do with theatre, or what can we do with comedy and theatre, not what can I be told to do.
There's something a little bit fun to not have a playwright to hide behind too, I find. Because if it sucks, or if you suck, you can be like, I didn't write the lines, not my circus, not my monkeys. And being able to shake off that sort of responsibility is awful safe.
Okay, can I pick up on what you just said there about hiding behind a playwright? No, that's not what you do, but I understand what you're saying. There's this, the attitude of taking their responsibility. But what I would like to pick up on the playwright is that I propose that Commedia was before the playwright and before the director.
Absolutely.
That's much better.
I tried on a fabulous one of those earlier today, Ollie.
Thank you. We got some of the hats out. Anyway.
Oh, is that what we're doing? Well, then hold
No,
up.
no. I just thought I put it on. It was up there. Sorry, Tony.
Okay. You've broken my concentration now. I was going to say something really important.
Okay, hiding behind the playwright.
That's right. I often say to my troupe that this was the days, or university students, I say this is the day before writers were invented and directors. It's just a bunch of actors getting together and putting on a show. So you might have a maestro, I say to them, but it's usually, I see it as an ensemble theatre where the actors are not really concerned with what a director would be concerned with. In other words, the scenes just flow on from one to another, really playing for gags.
Oh my God! Well, okay. I'm just reading some books about early Shakespeare at the minute. Okay. If you go back into Roman stuff, okay, you get, I know, Terence and Plautus. They were a script writer. Okay, they wrote plays. When you get into the early Elizabethans, what's really quite curious, you get a whole bunch of my hat's going back on. You get an early, you get an early equivalent. Sorry, I'm distracted now. Right, I'll get back onto the message. In England, you get an equivalent of the Italian Commedia erudita. You get a bunch of gentlemen poets putting on semi-amateur shows,
closet drama,
on neoclassical models, blah blah blah. But when you get the early Henslow, it's basically Henslow is paying one gentleman playwright for a storyline. Right, he likes the storyline, and then he gives $5 bob to another playwright to write another 2 scenes for it, and then pays someone else to write another 2 scenes, and then you've got people like Kemp, who actually wrote his own scripts, and even a later fool, Robert Arnhem, who wrote his own scripts anyway. So you've actually got at a particular period as theatre developed in Elizabethan England, you got a whole bunch of actors and entrepreneurs who are, there isn't a playwright. There's a whole bunch of playwrights. Very good. Hey, Mercury Monkey. So you get a whole bunch of playwrights. Sorry, gotta
fix it.
You get a bunch of actors who are trying, who are using a wide variety of playwrights in order to create their shows. And in fact, even all through Shakespeare's time, there's a whole bunch, the whole thing about playwriting was collaborative. What this is all about was actually one was actually saying that actually it was the storyline that Henslow bought first, and then he started to stick then got different playwrights to write different bits of it. That's interesting, but something that we were going to do with Old Spot Theatre, but we couldn't find. No, this is all to do with poetry, and kind of heightened stuff, and this hedge being the fourth wall. Is that among the actors and among our vocal skills, what we could actually do? Okay, we got like a very good comic show, but what we wanted to do was actually find a local poet and bring him in and show him the show and say, okay, can you write some other words for our actors? So that at the points of heightened emotion, you would bring in a specialist wordsmith, to write, just short sections. Not a playwright, but someone who's writing words to enhance, in definitely a poetic style. So we could go from the comic and the farcical and the magically insane, into art. So we're trying to follow the whole, really make each scene a different scene, so that the audience is, is being given a different wow at every particular moment.
Ollie, am I right to remember that? I can't talk with this nose. That
Pigsy.
the lovers would actually pull from Tuscan poetry.
I think so. Well,
I remember reading that.
The lovers spoke, open quotes, Tuscan Italian, which was at the time of the late Renaissance, considered the most important.
Yeah. Which is what I speak.
Yes, right. Very good. Perfect, my darling. Perfect. Very good.
Probably not in a hexameter, but it's
no. The kind of issue with the Commedia, historically, is whether the lovers who played, the people who played the Tuscan lovers actually came from Tuscany.
Mm-hmm.
Where Pantalone probably did come from Venice, but the servants spoke Bergamasque, which might have been the Italian equivalent of being from Alabama.
I can't take myself seriously. I feel bad whoever's watching this live. I was just, I spent a lot of time in Bergamo for this tour, and they're just mountain people. You go up there and you ask them for directions, and it's like speaking to someone from West Virginia. It's incredible.
Well, I've actually been.
No, but it's whether it was like a stage, Bergamasque,
Yeah, but the fact that it
yeah.
still exists is ridiculous.
Yeah, we've been trying to if we were to put different stock characters into the United States, because we're always trying to figure out ways to really contextualize this in Texas. We're in Texas, so we've really got to give it a sense of place. And
you have feminists and fascists.
Sure, yeah, they're the same. Feminist fascists. I live under the rule of Governor Goodhair. Feminists are fascists. So we've been trying to figure out what dialect, American dialect, each of the stock characters would have, and there's a few that we've kicked around quite a bit. The main hang-ups being, where does Pantalone live, and where does Dottore live?
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have any thoughts about that?
What kind of in America as a whole
where would you find Pantalone and where would you find Dottore?
It depends on the context, because Well, like with Old Spot, our context was Gloucester,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was actually being very specific. It was within the county of Gloucestershire. If we're making them in more English, like over the entire, I know England's only as big as Texas, but if we were, if we make it over England, I think our choices would have been slightly different. It's Pantala, it's and the issue I think that Antonio Fava and Bozo is like agree on is the characters have to be recognised by an audience.
Mm-hmm.
So so that if you're making Pantalone a banker, he has to be recognised. Like how do bankers speak? He has to, he kind of has to move like that. I would always, because I'm prejudiced and kind of I know very little, I would probably say that I know the Doctor probably comes from Boston, or something like that, because he's educated, and stuff like that, and that's where he comes from Harvard or kind
That's
of
where Scott McKee is from. Or that's where he studied. That's where he did his PhD, I believe. Oh no, maybe his master's.
All right. Well, no, it's just that's just I met cultured Americans from Boston, and then from New York, it was all a bit more scary.
Right.
Brugella, I'd say, comes from New York, or but
comes from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, yeah, what the fuck? But then it's only but then it's only a type. So that
I also think it depends on what conflict isn't the right word, but where the hypocrisies of the characters are that you're looking at. For example, if you just look at Dottore, someone who's incredibly quote-unquote intellectual but really spends his time on essentially bodily and useless things like Williamsburg in New York City. I feel like the hipsters are essentially like really young Dottores, like people who can just talk your ear off about the stupidest things. And again, like the whole social structure is completely different now, and the whole power structure is different now. But I think it's all about the.
I mean, the thing is.
The thing that you're looking at. Go ahead, sorry, Polly.
No. I mean, like in England, we still have the class system, and we still have people, and people generally acknowledge that, and people have accents often based on their class, so it's quite easy, to do that. I mean, as far as I understand, from my dealings with America, the aim is to try and be classless, and the American dream is that that everyone can improve themselves, which kind of means everyone is in denial about the class system.
I would say that the only one, for lack of a word, like dichotomy dialect is that, just sort of like a flat American accent and then essentially a Southern accent is what I feel like when you tell an actor, okay, your character is stupid, come on and say something, they will probably inevitably do a Valley Girl accent or do a Southern accent.
Yeah. There's also this like strange accent that I'm not sure where it's from, but if you've seen any, what is it? Is it Family Guy? They've got the like underbite guy or whatever. It was like, oh yes, no, well let's still go. The like sort of lifestyles of the rich and famous guy, and it's this sort of like affected, strange, like doesn't make any sense. It's probably East Coast somewhere. It's like old money, rich, house in the Hamptons kind of garbage. And so I've always sort of, in my head, put Pantalone there, where he's like, oh, my family came over in the Mayflower. Yes.
Interesting. That's the like the twang that Katharine Hepburn naturally had.
Yeah.
And in the original, like in the 40s and 50s, that would be like the received pronunciation of film actors, is you would have to learn that New England accent. So like His Girl Friday, like Katharine Hepburn, they were all speaking this sort of the fast talk.
Yeah. Maybe that's it.
Can I join in on this one?
Absolutely.
I've got a story I'd like to share with you because I see that the language or script influences in the Commedia might be a little bit too academic for me. I like to just think to treat Commedia with a real sort of here and now. And one of the things that I did, it was many, many years ago now, is that I was in Canberra. I don't know whether you know Canberra here in Australia. It's our capital. city, and what was happening in this small little, it's only a small capital we have in Australia, but it had a coffee shop, which is upstairs was brass rails and pink salmon carpet, and down in the basement underneath this coffee shop was an artist's retreat where they were, you know, it was a coffee shop as well, but they were playing music and doing poetry and stuff. And the coffee shop upstairs tried to put the other coffee shop out of business because they were loud and noisy and not making their establishment look very nice with all these sort of young dreadlocked youth going in and out of this basement. They used an old council bylaw, quite old, to actually close them down. And the community in Canberra got wind of this, and the newspapers did articles on it about it was sort of unfair business practice, you could say. And so there was a troupe of actors, there was 3 of them, performing in Canberra, and they wanted to do a commedia version of this story. And so what we did was we made Pantalone the coffee shop that was putting the other one out of business, and we made it very, very bad. Like, he made a pact with the devil to get rid of the other coffee shop owner, and the other coffee shop owner was Tartaglia, kind, friendly, and you know, lovely. You know, the audience absolutely took to him. Harlequino was actually a waiter in his restaurant. So what we did was we took the characters, their stock characters, and took them to the extreme. One of the things that that happened during the performance, we only played it 3 times sorry, I'm getting a bit tongue-tied here. We only played it 3 times when we finished our rehearsals after the event of this business closure, and we invited the owner of the coffee shop that put the other one out of business. And he was there in the opening night, and the other members of the other coffee shop were there, and it was a real celebration, like what would you call it? Like a releasing, a bloodletting, if you like. And of course, we all got on afterwards. So the kind of play that the Commedia was doing, the role that it played, was important for that community. It was like a way of exposing the situation rather than just it being in newspaper.
Yeah. No, that sounds brilliant. No, oh wow, that sounds good. But that's just it. Just in terms of accents. Just in terms of accents, like the Pantalone then had a very clear context.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like how your character speaks, because I know this might sound a bit academic, but in all the Flaminia Scala scenarios, it's always very clear to say where the action happens. You know, so that the Pantalone is, so like, so the characters are very firmly placed somewhere. So that it isn't just a generic Pantalone. It's we have a banker, but the banker is in Texas. So like so like he could speak like the governor, or or the governor's best mate who's always advising him, or something like that. That makes sense. You don't have to play him as the governor or a parody of the governor. Just the fact that he speaks like him is enough for everyone to identify with it.
I think that the challenge as well is that Italian itself is a very young language, and so what we think of as, oh, I've got a southern dialect or I've got a northeastern dialect, is they were essentially different languages. So I forget who was speculating about it, but the possibility that all of these characters are coming from different dialect worlds means that audiences all over Italy are at least understanding one of the characters, and through that character they follow the story. And because Italy wasn't a unified state, each of these, like you said, Ollie, each of these different dialect groups brought an entire different world, essentially, onto the stage.
Yes.
And we just don't have the equivalent of that in America at all.
Well, but we do have a strange kind of regionalism that I think is really interesting, because
I think you live in a more colorful America than I do, Kate.
Texas is a crazy place. It's crazy.
Garrison Keillor, it's all about Swedes, isn't it? You know,
Austin, especially, is such a melting pot of parts of the United States right now. I mean, it's almost like we have little Seattle, like, popping up, and, like, little Chicago, and little New York, because we have all of these implants here, or whatever, imports from, like, Los Angeles, and we've got a bunch of people from San Francisco, and a bunch of people from Seattle, and a bunch of people from Chicago and California, all coming to live in Austin because it's this cool city that's got South by Southwest, and people come here for that and they never leave. So Austin is when we perform, especially in these, like, cool bars or whatever, we're performing for people who, first of all, didn't know we were going to be there, but are also either homesick or are transplanted into a city that's, like, not really Texas, but Texas is a culture shock. Like, when I moved down here from Chicago, it was a strange place. Texas is its own, they think of themselves as their own country. And it was actually recently my trip to Dublin that I realized that when people ask me where I was from, I would say I'm from Texas. And they say, you're only Texans travel abroad and say they're from Texas and not say I'm American.
That's interesting.
And it's true, though. And then they turn around and they say, okay, here's a shot of tequila and here's a jalapeno. Prove it. So you drink a lot of tequila overseas if you're from Texas and you admit it. But it's been part of how we need to sort of think about our audience, is that we sort of live in a town of immigrants, like national immigrants, because, I mean, some of them are literal immigrants. We do have a lot of people, we have a huge Vietnamese population here. We have obviously a large Hispanic population. There's almost more Hispanic people in
So you need to find a Hispanic actor. You need to find, a Vietnamese actor.
You have
or something like, you have to. I mean, to a certain extent.
Totally, absolutely.
Well,
there's also a very strange division in Austin's theatrical community. There's a huge Spanish language theater community here that does amazing work that is totally strange to me, and I've seen a few of their shows, and it's all in Spanish, and they speak way faster than I could ever understand because my Spanish is rusty always, and the people who give theatrical awards don't really go and attend them, so they never receive awards, and they're just this strange, like, other artistic community. So
is it professional?
Well, as much as Austin has professional theater, yeah, they do. Okay. They do great. Yeah, and they're good. I saw this show that it sounded like a Commedia show. It was like Capitana something something, and her mighty voyage or something like that, and went and saw it, and it was, like, over the top and brilliant, and just, I mean, it was crazy. It was so physical, and it was like a Mexican soap opera, like that, like really over the top, emotional kind of stuff, and these beautiful costumes and fantastic sets. And people are coming and going and pratfalling everywhere. I mean, it was amazing. It was the coolest theater I think I've seen in town. Outside of our shows, obviously. But it was great. But the thing is that they feel so ostracized from the general English-speaking theater community that even though they're obviously fluent in English, they're really hesitant to do anything with us. So we do. Go ahead.
I would always try, but I would just throw into the mix the idea of take 5 of you guys and 5 of those guys and do a bilingual show.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
And just
our
see.
Our crazy plan is to try and see if we can do a Skype show with our friends in Terlingua, because we've been doing workshops with them and do sort of act 1 of a show. And then where they do it live there and we stream it here, and then we do act 2 and they stream it there, So it's sort of a two-part show, and then when we tour out there, we perform it together. And sort of do something like 10 years later, these are the children of the people before, or something along those lines, and try and see if we can do that. So that's what we've been trying to pull off, but there apparently, if you live in a very small community, theater relationships can get strained if you work together all the time. So they're having a bit of a schism going on right now, so it's been hard to coordinate with them because now we kind of have to pick sides, which is sort of awkward. So we've moved out of that situation for the time being. So now we just perform there and teach workshops whenever we can.
Can I pose a question?
Yeah.
I'm under the belief that the Commedia was political. At least it was commenting, making social comment in its plays. And so therefore I try and do the same thing with my productions, or at least I'm training now, so I pass on to my students that they should hopefully deal with the subject matter of something that's topical, political and topical. But one of the things that I've found is that it's very hard to deal with world politics as a production, because even though the world's become very small and that we know what's going on around the world, we get the news. It's very, very hard to do parody on such a large subject. It can be taken, you know, so many things can be taken when you're looking at the world view. So I actually say to my students, look at something that's local, you know, act locally, affect globally, if you like. So when I'm hearing you talk about doing a multilingual or a bilingual show, I think it's a fantastic idea. But then I'm thinking to myself, my mind's running ahead, how would you do that? And I'm thinking, well, what would your subject matter be as a troupe of performers? What would your responsibility be? And I started to run through some scenarios of political issues that you might be able to cover with multiculturalism or something like that. But isn't that getting too big? I thought to myself again, is there local things that you could do with your sharing production? You were talking about streaming.
Well, the thing to you with multiculturalism, like if I was to deal with it in a show, it wouldn't be about, like, you'd never say this show's about multiculturalism. You just have a pair of lovers from different cultures who fell in love, and
that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah, they'd just be working it out, you know, and there would be other stuff would just happen around them. You know, it would be almost enough to put that on stage.
Well,
in terms of politics, I mean, it's not.
Can I interrupt you there?
Yeah.
Because what I was picking up on what you said about how the audience must know the characters or know the characters, like Pantalone was a banker you were talking about before, and know how a banker would speak. I was more or less interpreting that the audience must know is that when you present a character like Pantalone, that they know that he's representing a political person, like it was saying this is this politician who is doing this act, and so you do a parody of that politician and their whatever foibles they're up to at the time. So what I mean by, or what I understand, the audience must know who the character is. They must know the story that you're trying to expose. If we're looking at a political parody.
Okay, you're looking at a particular story or a particular.
Well, yeah, what we've tended to do is we did a lot of extremely political shows when we were the Austin Commedia Society. We were performing right after George W. Bush became president. So it was a very sort of tense political time in Austin, which is a very liberal city. So we did a lot of very political shows, and what we found was that our audiences initially were like, yeah, and then after a time they felt a little bit like they were being sort of hit on the head with a political hammer. So what we sort of do now is all of our characters are rooted in politics. We don't just do Pantalone as a banker. Pantalone is is with the Koch brothers or Koch brothers or whatever they're called. The guys
I think they are Cox, actually.
The Cox. Perfect. And so they're these sort of people who run this political machine. And so they're rich, and they're everything that the Occupy Wall Street hates about the 1%, and they're eagerly embracing that. And Arlecchino is, if we're going to have him, he's an immigrant. He's here. He's working really, really hard. So he's like not just everyone else, but he's the lowest rung of the ladder. And so as the show plays out, without very specifically addressing a local political issue, because Austin is extremely political anyway, we just sort of let the characters represent different socio-political things that are happening generally, and then let the narrative that we have decided to follow and the victors of that narrative, because often we kill everyone off, except for the people that we personally enjoy their politics. So that in a sort of velvet glove kind of way, we're showing whose side we're on by sort of letting these iconic sort of figures battle it out in the context of a different narrative. Because in the past, when we dealt with things like local corruption or water rights issues or things like that, it becomes very difficult to keep it
funny.
And well, not just that, but to keep it from being heavy-handed, because no audience ever likes to be preached to, and even if they're on your same team, there's such a delicate line there that we found it much easier to make it more of an allegory than about very specific issues. And if we feel like we're not being overt enough about it, we'll bring them up directly. We'll make jokes about it, and we will we'll mention, Governor Goodhair and do a whole joke about him, and even make a protracted scene about it. And how Pantalone is his good buddy, and he's made a lot of money off of the deals that this guy's brokered on his behalf. So when he falls at the end, it is much more satisfying, because this is the fall of the crony of the guy that we all don't like, kind of thing.
I understand what you're saying about trying to keep it funny. Yeah, I think I don't like political theater also, because it's hitting the audience over the head with a big hammer. I don't believe that it should be performed that way. I see Commedia doing a parody on a situation that the community all feels the same. So you're basically performing to the converted, is how I see it. Yeah. Because the day of Commedia, you've actually got the performers performing to the workers, the servants, and so therefore they're cheering when the servant gets the better of his master. And that's really, I feel, what was the role back then. Whereas if you bring it forward to today, when you're talking about trying to make it funny, Ollie, I see Commedia as more of like the political cartoonists. I mean, the masks are exaggerated caricatures, and so therefore the political cartoonist takes a situation and lampoons it, and the audience who reads that cartoon goes, yeah, I know exactly where he's coming from. And I believe that's the role of Commedia, not to bore them or not to hit them over the head with a message.
Yeah. Well, two things. Carlo Bosso uses the phrase Commedia stories is always a parable. He says, there's a reason it still works in kind of antique dress. He says because there's a safety distance. It's like, even the most right-wing audience, oh, look, it looks like theatre. They have masks and costume and a pretty little set. But, so it's safe, and there's a distancing effect because it's masked, and we can use lots of intellectual terms to describe that. But in fact, what it means is that then you have the actual free rein to do a complete parable of something. We did a street show with Carlo when Anna Pantalone and the Doctor had come up with this thing called, the new energy that was, poisoning all the cows and people were starving. He said it's not a good storyline, but it'll start. And it was, it was just, this was an attack on nuclear energy. But so as soon as you say nuclear energy in the ancient costumes, it blows the audience's belief. Because it's a sudden anachronism. So the skill and I've seen some ones of his shows that work and some that really haven't, is to at some point in the show make the audience realise they are watching a parable. And the other thing is what we're talking about when you say, I think what we're talking about. Well, there's a friend of mine, very old socialist actress, who's into Commedia because she says that when Commedia, she said the Commedia is political, and the Commedia characters, their shapes, is actually a personification of the Brechtian Gestus. It's like when Pantalone comes on stage, you as an audience go, he is in a particular socio-economic place, he has a particular attitude, he has a particular age, and you're supposed to get that all within under 3 seconds.
I have a chapter in my thesis exactly on this.
Yeah. Oh, way to go.
Theses, by the way. I'm super excited.
Sorry? What?
I would read it too.
Your thesis? Have you not read yours yet?
I haven't written it.
Post it on Academic Edu yet?
No, I'm about halfway through writing it.
Me too.
And then I went on tour.
What's your thesis about?
That's a really good question.
Is that a loaded question?
Essentially, very much centered around this problem. But I came from it from like a sort of a feminist perspective. Is can you make a commedia Carnavaccio in which the women are empowered, or can you make a Carnavaccio in which you aren't watching the women and feeling uncomfortable as a feminist? And so essentially I did like a mashup of Commedia dell'Arte and the story of the fall of man in the Garden of Eden, and basically Arlecchino and Columbina play act the fall of man, and Dattore comes in and interrupts it at the end. But my argument is in order to do something political and have it integrated into the story, you do exactly what you said. You make the gestus. And my argument was that the similarities between a lazzo and a jest can be very close. Like the penultimate one, the Arlecchino eating a fly, is absolutely a Brechtian jest. The fact that anyone is brought to
that state,
eat a fly with such detail, is A, if you do it the right way, hilarious, and B, absolutely devastating.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I want to read that. Send it to me when you're done. We'll swap. We'll prove it if you want.
Well, it also You'll go.
Bringing Commedia forward, I loved your analogy of saying that it's dressed in theatre. It looks like theatre. It acts like theatre. I love that analogy because a lot of people are talking about contemporary Commedia here in Australia, and I say, well, no, you can't do contemporary characters. That's just masked theatre. Commedia is about bringing this timeless form forward, and I love one particular skit that one of my actors did was where Arlecchino found a mobile phone. So the phone's on stage and it rings and he talks to it, not picking it up, of course, it's over the speakers, and it's speaking to one of those robot answering services where you say yes, no, or and stuff, and of course the audience knows.
Number 38.
That's right. The audience knows Arlecchino's dilemma because they've experienced it, and so what the actor is doing is playing with a common frustration in our time. But because we know that he's an ancient character, he knows not of technology, we enjoy that interaction, and that's the kind of way I like to bring Commedia into a.
No, that's great because it's a shared frustration with a modern thing that is deeply annoying.
Yeah.
Yes. No. No, that's good. Yes, it's a parable. No, and that's another kind of issue. Is as soon as you start putting, just in my experience, I might sound like a total old fart, but as soon as you put like a Pantalone mask with a modern banker, it doesn't work. You know, it has changed. It has changed to something else with another bunch of rules.
Well, it's the
And
same experience I had when I saw King Lear performed when they were wearing World War II uniforms. So they brought it forward in time. I didn't like it at all. Give me Shakespeare as Shakespeare.
oh, the RSC did that, and it was really it was they actually had to. Yeah. Yes. No. And on some bits they did use really old-fashioned costumes because otherwise
This,
it was
this was
just
a performance in Australia. I don't think it was the same one, but
no. But it was and I've seen an RSC one where it was all in. Yeah, it was all in World War II uniforms. It was really miserable. I mean, even more miserable than a Lear normally is.
I'm literally
Because it was too close. Because there was,
yeah.
you know, you can take Lear's misery because it's historical and fantastically distant. Yeah, but when they, you know, when
Well,
they
we're
make it,
doing it in a Commedia and matching it with Game of Thrones because really it's all about there's a crown on the field and people are dirtbags.
Hey guys, I'm so sorry. I have to get up in like 5 hours to perform sketch comedy for tiny Italians and Dutch kids. The school apparently has just, this is incredible. They've taken one of their middle school classes and sent them to the Netherlands, and then they've taken an entire class and brought them to Italy.
That's
This
cool.
is really cool. All right,
Yeah.
but this is incredibly fascinating.
Well,
I
good
wish I
show. You can watch the rest of it. It will be online as soon as I, get around to
well,
it.
I'm up at 6:30 tomorrow as well to go and teach in a mad school. So I was just going to exactly the same point. Going, excuse me, I've got to go.
I'll be thinking
Well,
of you
that works
tomorrow.
out fairly well then because it is Mother's Day here and I still haven't been taken out to go get chili rellenos. So I'm going to then make
Enjoy
my
your
husband take me out to dinner.
I'm sorry, Tony. It's still early morning your way, isn't it?
that's right. I'm ready for another couple of hours talking about Commedia. Where are you guys going?
No, for me, it's a
Who
quarter.
else?
It's a 1:45, and I've got to be up in 5 hours. Yeah, like Francesca. So that's oh,
Well,
Well,
I'll
let
be
me
more on the spot next. So it won't be June. It'll be July. So we'll do this in July. All right.
cool.
I think I can.
You'll all have to wish me a happy birthday because it'll be very close to my birthday.
Ah,
Well, then.
Yeah.
Well,
Then.
not now, okay.
Then.
Let,
Next
before you
time.
go, let me say thank you very much for talking about Commedia. I don't have many people to talk to here in Australia, so thank you.
Okay.
and that
Well,
was always
okay, we'll find some. We'll find. Is your emails part of? Okay, yeah. No, I'll find you people. Cheers, Francesca.
Bye, Ollie.
Bye
Good to
bye.
see your face.
Are you doing the Q thing? Are you going to do the Q thing?
Me?
Are you? Yeah, you.
Me?
Francesca,
No, Francesca, are you going to do the Q? Because I'm trying to negotiate with Michele about it at the moment.
Oh, the Q thing. No, I am not. But I will be in Arezzo while it is going on.
Okay, I'm not sure
I
whether.
have
Yeah, no, I'm
paperwork.
trying to get there. I'm trying to get there. I'm trying to
Oh.
get. Yeah.
Well, then we can have our scotch. There's a communist bar
Yeah.
that's
We will
really
have a
cheap
scotch.
in Gavilan.
You try to get there, Kate. All right then, folks.
I'm doing my best. It's the middle of my thesis, so if I can get my thesis done before then, I will be there.
Okay, keep
Okay.
me in touch, guys, because I'll definitely be in town.
Awesome. All right. Well, see you
Alright.
then.
Health
Okay.
and happiness to
See you
them
back.
elderly.
Yes.
Bye
Goodbye.
bye bye.